So I've been thinking a lot about respect lately and how we have this need or this desire to be respected. And as soon as we're not respected, man, it's like that's all we can think about. It's like the air in my mountain bike tires. Whenever the air is in the tire and I'm rolling along, I don't really even think about that air in the tire. It does what it's supposed to be doing and it helps me ride, but I don't think about it. But as soon as that air starts to maybe slowly leak out of my tire and the ride starts to deteriorate a little bit, or if I hit something and the air all of a sudden leaves the tire, now I have no air in that tire, that's all I can think about. I can't continue my ride, my bike's not working. I just think about like tire pressure and getting air back into that tire. When we have mutual respect for one another, we don't really think about it. We don't say, oh, there's a lot of respect in the room. But as soon as the respect leaves, we recognize it, and it's all we can think about. We want to get that respect back. But I want to suggest that maybe it's not so important that we worry about how we feel respected, especially as parents or as dads. This one's really personal to me because recently I had sort of this epiphany about how feeling that lack of respect really causes or prompts behavior that probably isn't the best out of me. So here's what I'm thinking about respect and why it maybe isn't as important as we've felt that we need to be respected by our children all the time. And I know what you're thinking. I grew up in that same maybe generation where it was like, I must be respected. That's the end of it, period, end of story. And if you don't respect me, I am going to drop the hammer, right? And so I've been thinking a lot about this, and respect probably isn't as important as we sort of make it. The other thing that I've realized is that I can feel disrespected in a lot of different ways. It could be the subtle eye roll, or it could be the sarcastic comment, or a raised voice, or when I'm not really listened to, when my opinion isn't taken, or when I'm cut off, interrupted. Those are kind of some of my triggers. I've got a lot of them, right? And probably we all have times where we feel disrespected. So here's what happens though. When I feel disrespected and my initial gut reaction is to return disrespect for disrespect, I drop the hammer, so to speak. The result is we've got two people who feel disrespected and the conversation goes nowhere or the situation deteriorates. So what I would like to suggest is that there are kind of three things that we can do when we feel disrespected. This is kind of geared more towards children, but I think you'll find that these principles can apply to the workplace or to spouses. Three things that you can do when you feel disrespected. First of all, don't forget your original goal. And that sounds so basic, but when we go into these conversations, let's say that we're going to have a conversation with our child about something like setting the curfew. Right? And we go and we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. We're staying calm, we're being logical, we're making sure everybody feels safe. And then all of a sudden it happens. Your child says something like, you're being ridiculous, which is okay, we kind of expect that. But then they go a little bit further and they say, you're just being stupid. Whoa. Now they've crossed the line, right? And so now I feel disrespected. And so what do? I forget that my goal was to talk about the curfew. My goal was to come up with a mutually agreed upon curfew time. I've completely forgotten about that now because I've been disrespected. And so now I say, oh, I'm being stupid. Well, I think, fill in the blank how you might respond to that. Don't forget that your goal is, whatever it is, going to talk about curfew or setting parameters about chores or schoolwork assignments, whatever it is, that is your goal, regardless of the disrespect. Now, just remember, you can address disrespect anytime afterwards, right? So it's not like this is not permission for a child to be disrespectful and to be rude to adults, but it's just saying that there's a time and place for it. And your goal going in was something very specific. Then if you stop to talk about the disrespect or you trade disrespect for disrespect, you get nowhere in your initial goal. So that's number one. Number two is very tied to that, and that is always model the behavior that you want to see from your child. Always model that behavior. So even after you're disrespected, you are going to model what you would like to see your child do. As the child or the person you're speaking with starts to get frustrated or irritated, or maybe they escalate their voice, they use sarcasm. If we don't want people to treat us that way, then we are not going to treat them that way, regardless of whether or not we're going to take the higher ground. We'll say we're gonna keep our composure. We're not going to be sarcastic in a rude way. We're not going to use inappropriate humor. We're not going to raise our voice. We are going to model exactly what we'd like our child to do. That brings us to the third point, which is you have to believe going into a conversation or into a situation that it's going to have a positive outcome. And again, this seems like common sense. Like, why would we ever go into a situation thinking it's going to go horribly wrong? But we do it all the time. I'm going to go have a conversation with my child about curfew. I already know that they're not going to agree with it. They're going to yell. They're going to call me names. They're going to stomp. We have already created the self-fulfilling failure prophecy. We've told ourselves it's going to go poorly, and as a result, you can guarantee it will go poorly. Instead, we need to tell ourselves, I'm going to have this conversation with my child, and it's going to go well. I am going to do whatever it takes to make this conversation go well. But I'm going to figure out a way that we can agree on a mutually beneficial solution to a problem. We tell ourselves this, and then what happens is that our brain kicks into gear. It says, oh, okay, now I'm in solution mode. I'm not in fight or flight. I'm not already telling myself this is going to be a fight, and so I've got the adrenaline pumping going into a conversation. Instead, I'm telling myself, we need to figure out a solution here. I need to figure out a way to have this conversation. When do I have the conversation? How do I approach the subject? What are some of the mechanisms I'm going to use to diffuse tense situations? How are we going to come to a resolution that we both agree to? As soon as we do that, our brain kicks in, it goes into solution mode, it starts finding solutions to these problems, and then we increase the likelihood that we'll have a successful conversation. So, as I thought about this topic of how do you have more effective conversations with your children, I realized for me, a lot of it came down to this issue of respect, or not feeling like my children respected me. And I realized that what I was doing, as soon as I felt that disrespect, I would return disrespect for disrespect, and it would lead to really challenging conversations. I had to accept that I'm not always going to be respected. And I can choose to either return the favor, or I can focus on the initial goal that I had. And that led me to these three solutions, or ways in which we can help kind of alleviate that feeling that we have to be respected. So again, it is when you feel that disrespect, number one, make sure that you continue to focus on the goal that you had in the first place coming into the conversation. Number two is to always model the behavior that you want your child to be taking upon themselves. And number three, as you prepare yourself to go into some of the more difficult conversations you're planning to have, make sure that you tell yourself it's going to be successful, and take time to let your brain think of ways that it can be successful. So I hope those three ideas are helpful to you. If you haven't mastered these skills, it probably just means that you're human. If you're willing to work on them, it means you're a good human. So keep up at it. Hope these have been helpful. Have a great afternoon.